I am Anna, 50 years old now, and I haven't spoken to my family in 32 years. They kicked me out at 18, always favouring my twin sister Sophia. I rebuilt my life from nothing, becoming successful despite their abandonment. Now that my father died, they suddenly want to reconcile after 3 decades. Their real motivation, my money, the shocking part, my wife Sarah, who knew nothing about my past, is taking their side. Before I tell you how my own wife betrayed me, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever felt the sting of family betrayal. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston during the 1970s and 80s should have been a normal childhood. Our house on Maple Street looked like any other on the block, with its small front yard and white picket fence. From the outside, we were the perfect American family, my father James, mother Margaret, and us identical twins Sophia and me. The first memories I have of feeling different began around age 5. It started with small things that most people would overlook. Sophia always received new clothes while I got her hand-me-downs, despite us being the same age. At Christmas, Santa somehow brought Sophia the deluxe dollhouse, while I received the basic model. During dinner conversations, my parents would lean towards Sophia, their eyes lighting up at her every word, while my stories were met with distracted nods. School became my sanctuary. I excelled academically, bringing home perfect report cards and winning science competitions. Sophia struggled with academics, but was incredibly popular, bringing home invitations to birthday parties and sleepovers almost every weekend. When I showed my parents my first perfect math test, my father glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Anna." But when Sophia managed to get a C+ on her English paper, they celebrated by taking us all out for ice cream. I learned quickly that my achievements needed to be exceptional to receive even a fraction of the attention Sophia got for mediocrity. So I pushed myself harder, staying up late, to study, joining every academic club, winning competitions. I thought if I could just be perfect enough, they would finally see me. Our 10th birthday party revealed the truth I had been trying to deny. My parents had planned a joint celebration at the local park. When the day arrived, Sophia woke up with a mild headache. Within minutes, my mother had cancelled the park reservation and rescheduled the party for the following weekend. My disappointment was an afterthought. That evening, as I sat alone in our shared bedroom while Sophia was being comforted downstairs with her favourite soup and a new toy, to help her feel better, I realised no achievement would ever be enough. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother Elizabeth, my mother's mother. She lived an hour away, but whenever she visited, she made sure to spend equal time with both of us. During her visits, she would take me aside and tell me stories about strong women throughout history who had overcome obstacles. "Anna, you have a special light inside you." She would tell me, her wrinkled hands holding mine tightly. "Some people are too blind to see it now, but someday the whole world will. Just remember that your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it." When I was 13, grandmother Elizabeth passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. At the funeral, I stood beside my family as people offered condolences. Multiple relatives approached Sophia, hugging her as she cried dramatically, commenting on how close she had been to grandmother. But grandmother Elizabeth had been my ally, my supporter, my only family member who valued me. Yet in death, as in life, Sophia had somehow claimed the primary relationship. I cried silently, mourning not just my grandmother, but also the loss of the only person who had truly seen me. With grandmother gone, I felt completely alone. But her words stayed with me, becoming a mantra during the darkest moments. My worth wasn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. I held on to that truth as I navigated the increasingly obvious preference my parents showed for my twin. High school should have been a fresh start, but the patterns established throughout my childhood only intensified. I entered freshman year with a determination to excel despite my parents' indifference. I selected the most challenging classes, joined the debate team, and signed up for the science club. Meanwhile, Sophia joined cheerleading and quickly became part of the popular crowd. During sophomore year, I entered the state science competition with a project on early computer algorithms. After months of work, I advanced to the finals and eventually won first place. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon. I had reminded my parents repeatedly about the importance of this event, and they had reluctantly agreed to attend. The day arrived, and I stood on stage scanning the audience for my family as the judges announced the winners. When they called my name as the state champion, I walked to the podium amid applause, still searching for familiar faces. They never showed. Later that evening, I arrived home to find the house empty except for a note. "At Sophia's soccer game, Leftover casserole in fridge. Mum. That night, I heard them return celebrating Sophia's team victory with ice cream and laughter. No one mentioned my absence or asked about my competition. When I finally brought it up during breakfast the next morning, my mother said, "Oh, that was yesterday. I'm sorry, Anna. Sophia's team really needed family support for their big game." My father didn't even look up from his newspaper as he added, "You always do well at those science things anyway." Sophia needed the encouragement more. It was during my junior year that I discovered my passion for computer programming. This was the early 1990s, when personal computers were becoming more common, but still largely unfamiliar territory. Our high school had recently established a small computer lab with several Apple Macintosh computers. While most students viewed computer class as a requirement to endure, I found myself fascinated by the logic of programming languages. Ms. Jenkins, the computer science teacher, noticed my enthusiasm and began staying after school to teach me additional skills beyond the curriculum. She was in her early 30s with short brown hair and perpetually ink-stained hands. Unlike my parents, she actually noticed my abilities. "Anna, I've never seen someone pick up programming concepts so quickly," she told me one afternoon as I successfully debugged a complex program. "You have a natural talent for this. Have you thought about pursuing computer science in college?" Under Ms. Jenkins's guidance, I began to see a future for myself. She brought me college brochures, helped me research scholarship opportunities, and encouraged me to aim for top schools like MIT and Stanford. For the first time, someone was investing in my potential instead of dismissing it. While I was planning my escape through education, home life continued to deteriorate. Sophia had developed into an increasingly entitled and manipulative young woman. She had learned early that tears and dramatics would get her whatever she wanted from our parents. By 17, she had mastered the art of emotional manipulation. "Dad, everyone in cheerleading is going to Cancun for spring break," she would whine, pouting expertly. "I'll literally die of embarrassment if I'm the only one who doesn't go." Despite complaining about finances whenever I needed new glasses or required money for a school field trip, my parents somehow found $3,000 for Sophia's beach vacation. Meanwhile, I worked weekends at the local library and evenings babysitting to save money for college application fees and to buy my own necessities. As senior year approached, I focused all my energy on college applications. With Ms. Jenkins' help, I applied to several top computer science programs with MIT as my dream school. When the acceptance letters began arriving in spring, I could barely contain my excitement as I opened the envelope from MIT. Not only had I been accepted, but I had also received a partial scholarship based on academic merit. I rushed home that day, letter in hand, hoping that this achievement would finally earn my parents' approval. I found my mother in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Mom, I got into MIT with a scholarship," I announced, holding out the letter. She glanced up briefly. "That's nice, dear. Can you set the table? Sophia will be home soon with her college news." That evening, Sophia announced she had been accepted to a state university with a decent but unremarkable program in communications. My parents reacted as if she had won a Nobel Prize, bringing out champagne for a toast and immediately calling relatives to share the news. My MIT acceptance remained unacknowledged. Later that week, I overheard a conversation that confirmed what I had always suspected. I had gone downstairs for water when I heard my parents in the living room discussing college finances. "We should be able to cover Sophia's tuition and housing," my father was saying. "It's going to be tight, but she needs the full college experience without the stress of working." "What about Anna?" my mother asked. "MIT is expensive even with that partial scholarship." There was a pause before my father responded. "Anna has always been self-sufficient. She'll figure it out. Sophia needs more support to succeed." I stood frozen in the hallway, the reality of my situation crystallizing. I wasn't just less loved, I was considered less deserving of their support. That night, I cried silently in my bed, but also began researching student loans and work-study programs. If I would have to do this alone, then I would. But I would never forget this betrayal. As my 18th birthday and high school graduation approached, the tension at home became increasingly unbearable. One evening in April, about 6 weeks before graduation, my parents called a family meeting. I assumed it would be about graduation plans, or perhaps finally a discussion about my college funding. Instead, my father cleared his throat and announced they were converting my bedroom into a home office for his insurance business. "Your father needs a proper workspace," my mother explained, avoiding eye contact. "With you going off to college, it makes sense to repurpose the space." "What about when I come home for breaks?" I asked, already sensing the answer. "Where will I stay?" My father shrugged dismissively. You'll figure something out. Maybe stay with friends. Besides, MIT is far enough away that you probably won't be coming home much anyway. The implication was clear. They didn't expect me to come back. Or more accurately, they didn't want me to. You're converting my room, but not Sophia's, I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. She's going to college too. Sophia will be only 40 minutes away, my mother replied. She'll be home most weekends, so of course she needs to keep her room. The unfairness of it all overwhelmed me, and for once, I couldn't maintain my composure. This is because you've always favoured her, isn't it? Nothing I do is ever good enough. I got into MIT, one of the best schools in the country, and you didn't even congratulate me. My outburst shattered the veneer of family harmony we'd maintained for years. My father's face reddened as he stood up, pointing his finger at me. You've always been difficult, Anna. Always thinking you're better than everyone with your perfect grades and academic achievements. What about family loyalty? What about gratitude for everything we've provided you? I was stunned. Gratitude. You've given Sophia everything while I've had to work for scraps of attention and support. What exactly should I be grateful for? My mother intervened, her voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. We've done enough for you, Anna. You're smart enough to take care of yourself. Sophia actually appreciates her family instead of constantly judging us. Throughout this exchange, Sophia sat silently on the couch, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. When our parents left the room still fuming, she approached me with mock sympathy. You know, Anna, if you hadn't been so stuck up all these years, maybe they would love you too, she whispered. But you always had to make me look bad with your perfect grades and holier-than-thou attitude. I stared at her, finally seeing the truth. You did this on purpose. You turned them against me. She shrugged, dropping the pretense. It wasn't hard. They were always ready to see the worst in you and the best in me. I just helped the process along. She smiled sweetly. Good luck at fancy MIT. I'm sure you'll be very successful and very alone. The weeks leading up to graduation passed in a blur of tension and preparation. I graduated as valedictorian of our class, delivering a speech about perseverance and self-reliance that was really a message to myself. My parents attended the ceremony but remained distant, clapping politely during my speech while enthusiastically cheering for Sophia when she received her diploma. The final blow came on the night of graduation. I returned home from a brief celebration with friends to find several cardboard boxes stacked in the hallway outside my bedroom. My belongings had been packed haphazardly, books thrown in with clothes, fragile items without protection. What is this? I asked, finding my parents in the living room. We need to prepare the room for renovation, my father said without looking up from his newspaper. Since you'll be leaving for college soon anyway, we thought it best to get started. College doesn't begin for almost 3 months, I said, my voice shaking. Where am I supposed to go until then? My mother finally met my gaze, her eyes cold. We need the space, Anna. Sophia's graduation party is next weekend and we have family coming to stay. You have 2 weeks to make arrangements. I stood there, the reality of my situation crashing down on me. They weren't just favouring Sophia, they were actively pushing me out of the family. At 18, with only about $2,000 saved from my various jobs, I was being made homeless by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I made desperate attempts to reason with them over the next few days. I begged, I pleaded, I even swallowed my pride and promised to be less difficult. But their minds were made up. To them, I had always been an inconvenience, a reminder of their failings as parents when compared to my achievements. And now they had a chance to remove that inconvenience permanently. The night before I left, Sophia came to the guest room where I'd been sleeping since my bedroom was already being demolished. I just wanted to say goodbye, she said, leaning against the doorframe. And to tell you that I've always known you were the smarter one, the better one. That's why I had to make sure they loved me more. It was the only way I could win. Her admission should have brought satisfaction, but it only left me feeling hollow. This isn't a competition, Sophia. We're sisters, twins. Everything is a competition, she replied simply. And I won. The next morning, I loaded my few boxes into a friend's car. My parents stood in the doorway, awkwardly formal, as if I were a distant acquaintance, leaving after an overextended visit. Good luck at school, my father said stiffly. Call us when you get settled, come, my mother added, though we both knew I wouldn't. I didn't say goodbye to Sophia. As my friend drove away from the only home I'd ever known, I didn't look back. I was 18 years old, essentially homeless and completely on my own. But for the first time in my life, I was also free from the constant comparison, the subtle undermining, and the pain of never being enough. The first weeks after leaving my parents' house were the most challenging of my life. I temporarily stayed with my friend Jessica and her family, sleeping on their couch, while frantically searching for affordable housing near MIT. Jessica's parents were kind, but clearly uncomfortable with the situation, especially after my mother called them to explain that I had chosen to leave home due to being unwilling to follow family rules. I found a tiny studio apartment in a somewhat sketchy neighborhood that I could barely afford. It had a hot plate instead of a proper stove, a mini refrigerator, and a bathroom so small I could touch all four walls without moving. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was far away from the family that had discarded me. Working multiple jobs became my reality. During the day, I waited tables at a local diner. Evenings, I stocked shelves at a grocery store. Weekends, I picked up babysitting jobs and tutored high school students in math and science. Every penny went toward rent, utilities, and saving for upcoming college expenses. When September arrived and I finally moved into the MIT dormitory, I was exhausted but determined. While other freshmen were decorating their rooms with items from home and calling their parents for advice, I was calculating how many hours I would need to work at my new campus job to afford textbooks. The academic rigor of MIT was intense, especially while working 20 hours a week to support myself. There were nights I survived on vending machine snacks because I couldn't afford both dinner and the required course materials. My roommate, a girl from a wealthy Connecticut family, couldn't understand why I never went out for pizza or ordered late-night takeout with the group. "Just ask your parents to put more money on your card," she suggested one night, watching me eat ramen noodles for the third time that week. "That's not an option for me," I replied, simply not wanting to explain my situation. During my first semester, I struggled not just financially, but emotionally. The abandonment by my family left a wound that affected my ability to connect with others. I was guarded, suspicious of kindness, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I avoided making friends, convinced that once people really knew me, they would reject me, just as my family had. The turning point came during my second semester when I took an advanced programming class taught by Professor Howard, a pioneering woman in computer science. After I turned in a particularly innovative project, she asked me to stay after class. "Anna, your work shows remarkable talent," she said, studying me with keen eyes. "But I notice you never participate in study groups, and you seem to be carrying a heavy burden. Is everything all right?" Something about her genuine concern broke through my defenses. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The lifelong favoritism, being kicked out, working multiple jobs while trying to keep up with coursework. I expected pity or awkward dismissal. Instead, she listened attentively before offering practical help. "First," she said, "I'm going to help you apply for additional financial aid and scholarships, specifically for students in your situation. Second, I'd like you to work as my research assistant. It pays better than your campus job and will actually advance your career." Professor Howard became more than a mentor. She became the supportive adult figure I had lacked. Under her guidance, I secured enough financial assistance to reduce my work hours and focus more on my studies. I took extra courses during summer sessions to graduate early, driven by a need to become self-sufficient as quickly as possible. During those years, I attempted to contact my family a few times. I called on Christmas my freshman year, only to have my mother tell me they were just sitting down to dinner with Sophia and couldn't talk. I sent a card when I made the dean's list, which was never acknowledged. After my junior year, when my mother called only to ask if I could loan Sophia money for a car payment, I made the decision to completely cut ties. The brief conversation confirmed what I already knew to them. I was valuable only for what I could provide, not for who I was. I graduated from MIT a semester early with highest honors and multiple job offers. Professor Howard attended my graduation, cheering loudly as I received my diploma. The absence of my family stung less than I expected. I had begun to build a life where their approval no longer defined me. My first job was at an emerging tech company in Silicon Valley, where I started as a junior programmer, but quickly distinguished myself through innovation and work ethic. While my colleagues complained about long hours, I thrived under pressure, already accustomed to pushing myself beyond normal limits. Within 3 years, I had been promoted twice and had developed a reputation in the industry for elegant, efficient code solutions. By 28, I had saved enough money and built enough connections to take a risk that would change my life, starting my own software company. With a small team of talented programmers I had met throughout my career, We developed a revolutionary algorithm for data processing that attracted immediate attention from major corporations. The early years were challenging with long nights and uncertain finances, but we persevered. By my mid-30s, my company had become a leader in our field, and I had achieved the financial success I had once only dreamed about. Through it all, I remained emotionally isolated. Success brought colleagues, acquaintances, and business partners, but I kept everyone at arm's length. The lesson I had learnt from my family had been reinforced throughout my life: vulnerability leads to pain. Better to be self-sufficient than to risk rejection again. At 35, I had achieved professional success beyond what most people accomplish in a lifetime. My company had grown to employ over 200 people with offices in 3 cities. Industry publications featured profiles of me as an innovative leader in tech. I had a beautiful home in an exclusive neighborhood, a collection of art I loved, and financial security I had once thought impossible. What I didn't have was anyone to share it with. My life consisted of work, brief social interactions at industry events, and solitary evenings. I had convinced myself this was enough, that emotional connections were unnecessary complications. Then I met Sarah. It happened at a charity gala I had reluctantly attended as a major donor. I was standing alone counting the minutes until I could politely leave when someone bumped into me, spilling champagne on my dress. "I'm so incredibly sorry," a voice exclaimed. I looked up to see a woman with warm brown eyes and a genuinely mortified expression. I was trying to avoid the waiter and did exactly what I was trying to prevent. "Please let me pay for the cleaning." Instead of feeling annoyed, I found myself smiling at her obvious dismay. "It's fine, really. This dress has survived worse catastrophes than champagne." Her relief was palpable. "I'm Sarah, by the way. Sarah Williams, art director for the Children's Hospital Fundraising Committee, and apparently hazardous at parties. Anna Mitchell, software company CEO, and now wearing part of your champagne." We spent the rest of the evening talking in a corner of the ballroom, ignoring the speeches and networking opportunities around us. Sarah was unlike anyone I had met in my professional circle. She was warm, genuinely interested in others, and refreshingly straightforward. She worked as an art therapist with children, helping them process trauma through creative expression. Her passion for her work was evident in the way her eyes lit up when she described a breakthrough with a particularly withdrawn child. By the end of the evening, I had done something completely out of character. I had given her my personal phone number. 3 days later, we had our first date. Dating Sarah was like learning a new language. She was open about her feelings, expressed affection easily, and seemed genuinely baffled by my guardedness. Slowly, over dinners and walks and quiet evenings together, I began to lower the walls I had built over decades. 6 months into our relationship, as we sat on her couch watching a movie, Sarah turned to me with curious eyes. "You never talk about your family. Do they live far away?" The question froze me. I had successfully avoided this topic, deflecting her previous casual inquiries with vague responses. But sitting there with her hand warm in mine, I made a decision to trust. "I don't have a family," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Sarah listened in horror as I told her everything, the lifelong favoritism, being kicked out at 18, building my life from nothing. When I finished, there were tears in her eyes. "Anna, I'm so sorry. What they did was unforgivable." She squeezed my hand tightly. "But you do have family now. You have me, and I promise I will never treat you that way." Her words were like a balm to a wound I had carried for so long. For the first time in almost 20 years, I allowed myself to cry openly about what I had lost and what had been taken from me. Sarah held me through it all, her presence solid and unwavering. Our relationship deepened rapidly after that night. Within a year, Sarah had moved into my house, bringing colour and life to spaces that had been functionally elegant but emotionally sterile. She hung artwork created by her young patients, rearranged furniture to create conversation areas rather than showcase pieces, and filled the kitchen with the smells of home-cooked meals. When she proposed on the anniversary of our meeting, I said yes, without hesitation. Our wedding was small but joyful, held in the garden of our home with a few close friends in attendance. The absence of my biological family was noted only briefly when the officiant asked who was giving me away. "I give myself," I answered firmly, with joy and gratitude. Sarah's family embraced me completely. Her parents, both retired teachers, treated me as another daughter from the first meeting. Her 3 siblings included me in family jokes and traditions, as if I had always been part of their circle. Holidays, which I had spent alone for years, became lively affairs filled with genuine warmth and acceptance. During our second Christmas together, as we sat in her parents' living room surrounded by family, Sarah's mother, Patricia, placed a hand on my arm. "You know, Anna, when Sarah told us about your past, I couldn't comprehend it. What kind of parents could reject such a wonderful person? But their loss has been our gain. We're so grateful you're part of our family now." Her words touched me deeply. For the first time, I felt what unconditional family love was supposed to feel like. It wasn't based on achievement or comparison. It was simply offered freely because of who I was, not what I could provide or accomplish. As our marriage flourished, Sarah brought up the possibility of children. The idea terrified me. How could I be a good parent when I had no positive model to follow? What if I unconsciously recreated the toxic dynamics of my childhood? "I understand your fears," Sarah said when I shared my concerns. "But the fact that you're worried about this shows you would never repeat those patterns. You know exactly what not to do." After months of discussion and soul-searching, we decided to adopt. The process was lengthy and at times frustrating, but eventually we welcomed 7-year-old Lucas and his 5-year-old sister Emma into our home. Both children had been in foster care after experiencing neglect, a circumstance that resonated painfully with my own history. The early days of parenthood were challenging. Lucas was withdrawn and suspicious, while Emma sought constant reassurance that they wouldn't be sent away again. I found myself drawing on my own childhood experiences to connect with them, understanding their insecurities in a way Sarah, who had grown up in a loving home, sometimes couldn't. "It's okay to be scared," I told Lucas one night after he had lashed out in fear of punishment for a broken glass. "But in this house, mistakes don't mean rejection. They just mean we're human." Slowly, over months and then years, our family bond strengthened. We created new traditions built on foundations of security and acceptance. I watched Lucas and Emma flourish in an environment where they were valued equally and loved unconditionally, and in the process continued to heal my own childhood wounds. By the time Lucas was 22 and Emma 20, they had become confident, compassionate adults. Lucas was studying computer science, following in my footsteps with his own unique approach, while Emma pursued a degree in psychology with plans to work with foster children. Our home remained their safe haven, the place they returned to during breaks and holidays, confident in their welcome. For 15 years, I experienced the family life I had been denied as a child. With Sarah, Lucas, and Emma, I learned what it meant to be fully seen and accepted. The pain of my past receded, becoming a distant ache rather than an open wound. Then the phone call came that would threaten everything we had built. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a spam call. Something made me pick up anyway. "Hello, is this Anna Mitchell?" A female voice asked, somehow familiar yet strange. "Yes, this is Anna." There was a pause then. "Anna, this is your mother Margaret." The world seemed to tilt sideways. After 32 years of silence, her voice brought a flood of memories and emotions I thought I had processed long ago. My hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Why are you calling?" I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "It's your father," she said, her tone oddly casual, as if we had spoken last week rather than 3 decades ago. "He passed away last Thursday. Heart attack." I waited for some feeling to emerge, grief, satisfaction, anything. Instead, there was only numbness. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied automatically. "We need to come together as a family during this difficult time," she continued. "Your sister is devastated and there are arrangements to be made." The presumption that we were still a family, that I would naturally want to participate in these arrangements, was so stunning I couldn't immediately respond. My mother filled the silence. "The funeral is next Wednesday. We expect you to be there. Family needs to present a united front." "I haven't been part of this family for 32 years, I finally said. "Why would you expect me to attend?" She sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. "Anna, whatever disagreements we had in the past shouldn't matter now. We're still your family." After ending the call with a non-committal response, I sat motionless at my desk. The contact was so unexpected, so surreal, that it took me several minutes to process what had happened. My curiosity eventually got the better of me. Using resources I had access to through my company, I conducted some research into my family's current situation. What I discovered was revealing my father's insurance business had failed about 15 years earlier after a series of poor investments. They had downsized repeatedly, eventually moving to a small apartment. Sophia had been divorced twice. and had 3 children she was struggling to support. In short, my estranged family was in financial difficulty while I had become wealthy. The real motivation for the sudden contact became clearer when Sophia called the next day. Unlike our mother, she attempted a warmer approach. "Anna, it's been so long. How are you?" Her voice was artificially bright, with the same manipulative undertone I remembered from childhood. "Mum told me you two spoke yesterday about Dad. I still can't believe he's gone." Our conversation was strained, with Sophia making superficial inquiries about my life, while dropping hints about her own struggles as a single mother with 3 wonderful children who would love to meet their aunt. When she suggested a video call with everyone, I reluctantly agreed, more out of morbid curiosity than any desire for reconciliation. The video call that evening was uncomfortable from the start. My mother and Sophia stared at me through the screen, their eyes widening as they took in my appearance, the obviously expensive artwork on the wall behind me, the subtle signifiers of wealth I hadn't thought to conceal. "You look wonderful, Anna," my mother said, studying me intently. "Life must be treating you well." "I've worked hard," I replied simply. "We've heard you've done quite well for yourself," Sophia interjected. "Some kind of tech company. Dad always said you would be successful with your brains." The revision of history was breathtaking. My father had never expressed any such confidence in my abilities. If anything, he had dismissed my academic achievements as showing off or trying to make Sophia look bad. As the conversation continued, they probed for information about my company, my home, my lifestyle. My mother eventually broached the subject of funeral costs. "The arrangements are quite expensive," she said with a significant look. "And of course, there are outstanding medical bills. Since you've done so well, we thought perhaps you might want to contribute. After all, he was your father." The request confirmed my suspicions about the real reason for contact after all these years. I promised to think about it and ended the call as quickly as possible. When Sarah returned home that evening, I told her about the unexpected contacts from my estranged family. Her reaction surprised me completely. "Oh, Anna, you must be feeling so many things right now," she said, sitting beside me on the couch. "But isn't this an opportunity for healing after all your father has passed away? Maybe this is a chance to find closure with your mother and sister." I stared at her, bewildered by her response. "Sarah, they abandoned me. They kicked me out at 18 and never looked back until they realized I have money they could use. There's nothing to heal here." Sarah's expression grew troubled. "But they're reaching out now. People change, families evolve. Don't you think Lucas and Emma would want to know their grandmother and aunt, their cousins? They're not reaching out for reconciliation," I argued. "They want financial help. They made that clear." "Maybe that's just their way of reopening communication," Sarah suggested. "Sometimes people need a practical reason to swallow their pride." Our conversation grew increasingly tense as Sarah continued to advocate for reconciliation. Then she dropped a bombshell. "I should tell you, I actually already spoke with your mother last week. I felt as if I'd been physically struck." "What? How?" "She called the house while you were at work. I was curious, so I talked with her. She explained that there had been misunderstandings in the past, but they've always regretted losing touch with you. She sounded genuinely remorseful, Anna." The betrayal cut deep. Sarah had gone behind my back to communicate with the people who had hurt me most in the world. She had listened to their version of events, their revisionist history, without consulting me. "They're manipulating you, just like they always manipulated everyone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't about reconciliation. It's about money." Sarah's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Not everything is a transaction, Anna. Sometimes family is just family with all its flaws and complications. You need to let go of this bitterness for your own sake." The argument escalated until Sarah said something that shook me to my core. "I've already invited them to come visit us next month. The children deserve to know their extended family. If you can't forgive for your own sake, do it for Lucas and Emma." I felt cornered, trapped between my past trauma and the family harmony I had worked so hard to build. Sarah's ultimatum was clear: even if unspoken, reconcile with my estranged family or risk damaging my marriage and my relationship with our children. That night, as Sarah slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling as if the stable, loving life I had constructed was suddenly built on shifting sand. The weeks following my family's unexpected reappearance in my life were among the most emotionally turbulent I had experienced since being cast out at 18. I found myself struggling to concentrate at work, losing sleep, and experiencing anxiety symptoms I thought I had overcome years ago. Sarah's ultimatum had left me feeling trapped. How could I explain to her the depth of the trauma my family had inflicted? How could I make her understand that this wasn't a simple case of an old family disagreement, but a fundamental rejection of who I was as a person? I finally decided to seek professional help. Dr. Kaminsky, a therapist specializing in family trauma, provided a space where I could process my complex emotions without judgment. What you're experiencing is very common for estranged family members who are suddenly contacted after years of silence, she explained during our second session, especially when the estrangement was the result of sustained emotional abuse rather than a single incident. My wife doesn't see it as abuse, I admitted. She thinks I should forgive and move forward for the sake of our family. Your wife didn't experience what you did, Dr. Kaminsky said gently. It may be difficult for her to understand the depth of the wound without witnessing it firsthand, and your family's version of events is likely very different from reality. Through these sessions, I began to understand that I had choices beyond simply capitulating to my estranged family's demands or fighting with Sarah. I could establish boundaries while still maintaining my integrity and protecting my emotional health. After much consideration, I decided to attend my father's funeral, not out of family obligation, but as a way to find closure on that chapter of my life. I went alone, asking Sarah to respect my need to handle this in my own way. The funeral service was surreal. I sat in the back of a half-empty church, listening to a pastor who had never met my father describe him as a loving family man dedicated to his wife and daughters. I watched my mother and sister accept condolences from the small gathering of relatives and friends, many of whom didn't recognize me or realize who I was. After the service, I came face to face with my mother and Sophia for the first time in 32 years. My mother had aged significantly, her once perfectly maintained appearance now marked by the strain of financial hardship. Sophia, still attractive in a hard-edged way, had the worn look of someone whose charm had failed to deliver the life she expected. "You came," my mother said, eyeing my obviously expensive suit and jewelry. "I wasn't sure you would." "I came to say goodbye," I replied simply. Sophia jumped in, putting her arm through mine as if we were still close. "We have so much catching up to do. My kids are dying to meet their successful aunt." The attempted manipulation was so transparent, it was almost laughable. As we moved to the reception in the church basement, both my mother and Sophia made repeated references to family obligations and how family takes care of family. Finally, over stale cookies and weak coffee, they made their pitch directly. "Anna, we've been struggling since your father's business failed," my mother said, dropping all pretense. "There are medical bills, the mortgage is underwater, and Sophia's children need things we can't provide. Since you've been so blessed financially, we thought you might want to help your family. We are family after all," Sophia added with the same manipulative smile I remembered from childhood. "And family helps each other." I looked at them both, these women who had rejected me, who had made it clear I wasn't worth their time or love until they needed something from me. In that moment, I felt not anger, but a profound sense of clarity. "We're not family," I said quietly. "We share DNA, but family is about more than biology. Family supports each other through difficulties. Family celebrates achievements rather than resenting them. Family doesn't discard someone when they're inconvenient." My mother's face hardened. "So after all these years, you're still holding a grudge. How typical of you, Anna, always thinking you're better than everyone else." "I don't think I'm better. I think I deserved better than what you gave me. And I've built a life and a real family that values me for who I am, not what I can provide." I left the reception shortly after feeling strangely lighter. The confrontation had confirmed what I had suspected: nothing had changed. They still saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. When I returned home, I found Sarah waiting anxiously. The distance between us had grown palpable over the past weeks. I decided it was time for complete honesty. "I need you to truly understand what happened to me," I told her. "Not my family's version, not even my abbreviated version, the whole truth." That evening, I shared details of my childhood I had previously glossed over: the birthday gifts that mysteriously disappeared, the achievements that were dismissed, the constant message that I was less deserving of love and support than my twin. I showed her my high school yearbook, where the only signature from my family was a perfunctory "good luck" from my father. I retrieved the single box of mementos I had salvaged when I was kicked out, showing her the contrast between photos of Sophia's celebrations and the absence of mine. Sarah listened, her expression changing from skepticism to horror as the pattern of neglect and emotional abuse became undeniable. "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" she asked. "Because it's humiliating," I admitted. "To acknowledge that your own parents found you so unlovable, they could discard you without a second thought." The next day, I took Sarah to meet Ms. Jenkins, my high school teacher, who had become a mentor and was now retired but still living in Boston. Ms. Jenkins confirmed everything, adding details from her perspective as an educator who had tried to advocate for me. I actually called their home once, Miss. Jenkins told Sarah to tell them what an exceptional student Anna was. Her father told me they were aware of her academic abilities, but were more concerned about her attitude. When I asked what he meant, he said she was showing off and making her sister feel inferior. This external validation finally broke through Sarah's skepticism. That night she held me as I had once held her, apologizing through tears, for doubting my experience, and for contacting my family without my permission. "I was so wrong," she whispered. "I thought I was helping, but I was reopening wounds I didn't understand." With this new understanding, Sarah and I worked with Dr. Kaminsky to develop a plan for limited, carefully boundaried contact with my biological family. We agreed that I would not provide direct financial support, which would only reinforce their view of me as a resource rather than a person. Instead, I established a scholarship fund for disadvantaged students in my father's name, a constructive use of money that acknowledged my connection to him without enabling toxic patterns. We also had a family meeting with Lucas and Emma, now adults capable of understanding the complexities of family dynamics. I shared an age-appropriate version of my history, explaining why they hadn't met their biological grandmother and aunt. "But we do have grandparents," Lucas pointed out. "Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert have always been there for us." "Exactly," I agreed. "Family is created through love and support, not just biology. Patricia and Robert chose to be your grandparents, just as your mum and I chose to be your parents." As the months passed, my mother and Sophia made periodic attempts to establish contact, each time with an underlying financial agenda. With Sarah's support, I maintained firm boundaries, offering emotional connection, but refusing to become their financial solution. Eventually, their contact became less frequent as they realized I wouldn't be manipulated. My healing journey continued through therapy, through the unwavering support of Sarah and our children, and through the chosen family we had built around us. I learnt to accept the past without letting it control my present, to acknowledge the pain without letting it define me. The experience taught me that forgiveness doesn't necessarily require reconciliation. I could release the anger and resentment toward my family without allowing them to continue patterns of emotional exploitation. I could acknowledge our connection without sacrificing the boundaries necessary for my well-being. Most importantly, I learnt that the family that matters is the one that sees you, values you, and loves you for who you truly are, not what you can provide or achieve. Sometimes that family is the one you're born into, but often it's the one you create through conscious choice and commitment. Have you ever had to choose between maintaining relationships with toxic family members or protecting your own well-being? If my story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family trauma and building resilience. Thank you for listening to my journey from rejection to rebuilding. May you find the courage to create the family you deserve, not accept the family you were given.